So, welcome to our annual celebration of Buddha's birthday. It is May 10th, May 11th today. It's usually celebrated on the 8th, which I think was a lunar calendar date. We just coming closer to the end this year. It was Sunday. There are many legends about Buddha's birth, as there are about other founders of the world's great religion. But we take these stories to be apocryphal. Their meaning is nonetheless very alive for us. We do not assume that we can second guess the ancestors who have passed these on, either in their veracity or their intent. So let us regard these wonderful images of our founder's birth. In the ceremony that follows, you will be asked to come forward individually and offer a flower to the memory of Buddha, in celebration of his birth, and in the continuation of his Dharma in the community today. The meaning of this offering began with the first transmission of mind to mind, represented by the historical event of Buddha raising a flower to illustrate the truth of his insight without speaking a word. The story goes that Kashyapa, one of his more senior students, smiled upon seeing this, and so wordlessly received the first transmission of the true Dharma, and became Shakyamuni Buddha's successor, the first ancestor. Pouring tea over the baby Buddha represents the legend that at his birth, tea rained down all over. Flowers sprang up where it fell. Thus, our pouring the tea over the statue of baby Buddha represents the nourishing of his Dharma in this age. Let me demonstrate how it is done. Formally, we enter the altar space sideways, like so. Make a vow. We take a blossom, one of the larger blossoms that fell off. We didn't use this morning. Simply raise it and turn the blossom. Place it in the tea. And using the dipper, we pour a ladle of tea over the Buddha's head. Wow. Step out again sideways. This was performed last week at Emily in China. So each member, please rise. Please rise where you are. Step forward in 2 lines if you like, alternate from side to side. Step them. Raise a flower from the bait, blossom, turn it, drop it in the tea. For one later till you dig it well. Meanwhile, we have your speaker puppet here with the recite this. We will be reciting. Begin by ready. May the merits of this recitation be given to everything of their universe. And may be a thing of truth about permeate see this earth. As if it's about law. There is no place the truth does not exist. It does it over every relationship. And then all meaning. It is each of its place to find. The meaning of protecting not on care of the means realized truth and you repeat on all harmony. They made a character commenting on nature to it. Either hardly or unknowingly. They completely right and still with substance. But there is another over death. The merit of the ceremony is dedicated to those still suffering in Ukraine, Gaza Strip, other troubled spots in the world. May all beings be happy. Please continue. The birthday of the Buddha is usually held on April 8th, because it is said that on that day, the Buddha was born a prince named Siddhartha. The legend of the birth of the Buddha depicts him as being born in the Lumbini Garden in India under an Ashoka tree in full bloom. Amid the flowering in this garden, the infant Buddha said they've taken 7 steps, and then pointing one finger to the heaven, and the other hand down to the earth, said or exclaimed, I alone am the most honored one in the heaven and earth. These words also mean Buddha, or the fully enlightened one. This posture is depicted in a small image of the infant Buddha upon the altar today, which is surrounded by the beautiful flowers. This statement may strike some people in the wrong way. They may think it is born conceit. But this is not the meaning of the Buddha's declaration. His words were meant to teach us the value of life, all life. As a representative of all that is alive, the child Buddha declared the importance of his nature. Realistically, the infant Buddha probably cried at his birth like all other babies. But his crying is not a symbol of original sin, like most Christians believe. Instead, his crying declared that all of life is precious. During his lifetime, the Buddha taught that all in the universe is one. He observed the nature of the universe in his enlightenment and said, how beautiful, all things are endowed with the truth, Tathagata. All existent things in the universe have a place in the scheme of things, from the lowest ant to the mightiest forces, and all are equally precious. This is part of the message of Samadhi. Later in the service, while we are killing street tea, or the infant statue is an act of devotion to the fully enlightened one. It is on this day that we joyfully remember the birth of the Buddha from his life on earth. We are joyful because his life taught us how we can become enlightened too. We think the birthday of the Buddha is usually held on April 8th because it is said that on that day the Buddha was born a prince in Siddhartha. So today is the celebration of the Buddha's birthday called Wesak, the Hanamatsuri. Hanamatsuri means festival of flower. It is the day when we observe the birthday of the historical Buddha when we surround his image with flower. In Japan, this religious holiday began celebrated 1,300 years ago during the reign of the Empress Suiko. It is now held widely through the country. Japan is the land of beauty, and its people are lovers of the beauty. It is not strange then that we observe the Buddha's birthday, marked with flowers, and that its more common name, Hanamatsuri, means flower festival. For centuries, Buddhist temples all over the world have set aside April 8th, or a day within that week, to honor the birth of the Buddha. On this day, in both homes and temples, beautiful flowers of many species decorate a tiny altar in which a statue of the infant Buddha has been placed. The statue of the newborn Buddha stands with one finger pointing ahead. The other two. Buddha thought the flowers should stretch across it, pour laid over sweet tea over the stick. Hanamatsuri is named after the beautiful flowers which adorn the altar on this day. However, Wesak used to be called Kambutsu in Japan to signify the pouring of the tea over the statue of the young Buddha. Kambutsu is the time of year most living things are beginning to stir and come to life. For us, it can be the beginning of a new spiritual life that will be like a fresh breeze. On this day, we should think about birth and new life. As we do so, let us not think just of the birth of humans, but of newborn, of animals, and of anything else that moves. Before us on the altar, we can see the budding of the plant. When humans think about life and birth, they should not think only of themselves as we were trying to do. They should think that all life, think of all life, and marvel at it. All that lives is marvelous, especially in the springtime, we can become intensely aware of life's majesty. Nature, which is the basis for all that we see about us, appears to be putting forth their most effort at this time of the year. Perhaps we should think how much of a mystery nature still is to us, in spite of all we know. When Dogen Zenji came to the front of the altar, his temple on Hanamatsu Day, hundreds of years ago. He made a large circle in the air with his hand and said, every creature and every Buddha was born when the Buddha was born. It was his way of saying that the whole universe is filled with the Buddha nature. There's a special significance attached to this in Zen, because in Zen, we attempt to uncover this Buddha nature within ourselves. When the infant Buddha is shown standing with his fingers pointed to the heaven and earth, it is another way of illustrating this truth. The whole universe is filled with Buddha nature. In one of the Buddhist sutras, the Nehan Sutra, says, every being has the Buddha nature. Dogen Zenji explained it passage even further. To him, everything that exists has the Buddha nature. Even the immobile rock in a Zen garden is possessed of that precious thing, the Buddha nature. Let us not think of the Buddha nature in a narrow sense. We can never completely describe it with words. We should not think of it as being just that force which gives life to living things. In such a vast universe, the Buddha nature takes on tremendous significance. The words we use to name it are only symbols. The Buddha nature is often called the original nature. If we understand it this way, perhaps it makes more sense to say that a rock has Buddha nature. But from the explanation of Dogen Zenji, we should also understand that the historical Buddha, Gautama Buddha, is not the only Buddha. You and I and everyone is a potential Buddha. Each has that original nature within them. When the Shakyamuni Buddha attained enlightenment, he realized that everyone could become enlightened like him. If you become enlightened, you too will see the Buddha light shining on everyone and on everything, everywhere. You will clearly perceive the Buddha nature in everything. But today we have gathered here to remember this lesson on Matsuri, for the birth of the Buddha. When we pour the sweet tea over the figure of the infant Buddha, it should symbolize the cleansing of our own bodies and minds. Zen, Shusho Ichi-myo, Shusho Ichi-myo, practice and enlightenment for just one. The dust in our bodies and minds separating us from enlightenment is swept away by the sweet tea. Make your body and mind shine. Let the light within you, your Buddha nature, shine forth. When you realize your original nature, peace will come into your heart and onto this earth. Well, let's close the ceremony. Probably don't think you're up for this. Well, no, let's do this simple. Uh, now, I join one more time in the three treasure vow. Thank you for being here. We'll take a short break. We'll be preparing lunch today, so we stay for lunch at 10. So, Don, I hope we came through loud and clear. This morning is usually set aside the second Sunday for an interview. But I think what we will do, we have a couple of new residents. Well, everybody please sit on this side. Change the angle a little bit so that it's clean. On camera unless you're on the land. Good in the corner. In the feet to connect up. Typically, anybody like to you're not chair.
Oh, Joe, you've set the camera up so that we have an excellent view of our Sangha this morning. Lots of smiling faces, good visual contact.
Not high in the wind. We have a cameraman. Put me over to the side a little bit more. So you see more of the
Your cameraman is doing a good job. Let's try to hang on to him.
So this morning, what I would like to do, typically we interview member on second Sunday. We have an interview coming up next Sunday on the third Sunday, which is unusual. But Brian Price will happen to be here. And he is a long-time member, some of you are familiar with, but we've never interviewed him. And he has a very interesting backstory. So this week, what I would like to do is ask several people in the room here to tell us a little bit about their interest in Zen, what brought them to Zen in the first place, what was going on in their life, and so forth. Who wants to start? I can start. Maybe. Can you hear the Cyrus from there?
Yes, I think so.
Please tell us a little bit about what you actually did. I think that the Zen practitioners seem to put more emphasis on meditation, and and I think that maybe it's good to get away from no. I enjoy reading books and listening about the Dharma, but I think it's important to do it also. Yeah, in some groups, they talk more and do less, and I think that the Zen do it more than many other groups. Yeah, the first thing attracted me is when there was something to do. Just sit there and listen to somebody preach. Sit down, shut up, and shut down. Sit up and shut down. We have a new resident. I'd like you to introduce yourself, Daniel. Tell everybody about your life, what you do, brought you to Zen in the first place, and what brought you here.
So my name is Daniel. I'm a musician, and I play jazz music, among other things. But I have a bachelor's degree in jazz guitar. So I've been playing guitar like my whole life. I think what brought me to Zen when I was a teenager, I read Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind, and it really inspired me, and I felt drawn to it. Um, we've also liked meditation. And again, like they were saying earlier, I think like having a practice was something that attracted me to it because it's I put into action, kind of like how I put learning music into action. So yeah,
I think the two are very similar, as you know, I come from a musical family, and the way, oh, I have the other one. Now you don't know how to undo that. There's something about this camera that's a little temperamental. There we go. Did you miss us for a moment there, John?
No, no interruption at all.
I just made a little change in the camera angle, and we're interrupted here. So, so I was saying I come from a jazz family, and I see an awful lot of parallels in jazz and music in general. And Zen. You teach piano or instrument, guitar, whatever. You cannot teach music. You can teach how people how to sit. You can teach diamonds, but you can't teach Zen. You have to find the music. You have to find the Zen. Okay, anyone online, John, have any question or comment that they would like to tell us about their? How about you? How did you first? You came to Canberra Park many, many years ago. How did that
I,
all come about?
um, I came to the Atlanta Soto Zen Center when you were at Little Five Points. Is that Candler Park?
Right.
Okay. And again, that was, I believe, about 30, 35 years ago. And I was searching at the time, and I recall uh, experimenting, visiting some of the more liberal, flexible Christian churches. And part of the exploration was to visit the Atlanta Soto Zen Center. I was living and I had created a business in Carrollton. And eventually, as my family got older, I had three sons. I made the decision to stop making that commute to Atlanta on Sundays and started sitting on my own. At that time, Hojo, you introduced me to another Carrollton resident, and we formed a Sangha of two for a while, and we're meeting and doing the typical rituals, routine, uh, with a Sangha composed of two people. And that worked quite well, actually. As the years went by,
Was he teaching at West Georgia at that time?
I'm sorry,
Was he teaching at West Georgia at that time? I think he had a French name, that he wasn't French.
I don't remember him teaching at West Georgia, and I don't remember what his career was. Um, Later, one interesting connection that you also made that was helpful for a while is you introduced me to someone else coming out of the West Georgia area who had gone to prison uh, for having a meth lab.
Right.
And he, I think, had created a Sangha maybe in the Cartersville area, but was driving in as well to practice there on Zonalite. And I commuted with him one time, and it was quite an interesting ride hearing about how he drifted into meth, creating a meth lab, and serving some time in jail, and then coming back, going back to work and starting a Sangha up in this area. I found that to be one of the more interesting backstories of our practitioners.
Yep. I remember him. So,
Oh, Joe,
go
do you
ahead.
have an idea what happened to him? I've lost track with him.
I heard he got re-incarcerated at one point, but it wasn't for meth.
Okay. Well, I'm sure he's probably started a prison sangha wherever he's located.
You always manage to put the best face on everything, John.
Well, you know, there are some commonalities. You have a lot of time to sit. Uh, the
Yep.
the responsibilities of shelter and food are taken care of, and if you can enlist a few other inmates, you've got a sangha.
Right.
And
First time John Cooper and I went to Milledgeville, it was still a men's prison at the time. When we left there, I said, John, we don't have to build any monasteries. They're building them every day. All we have to do is convert them.
so moving forward and wrapping up my answer, there was an opening when you mentioned putting a good perspective or a good spin on things. One of the blessings of COVID was that I discovered at some point that the Atlanta Soto Zen Center had created a Zoom account and a link that allowed me to return virtually. And that's how I began practicing uh, with the Atlanta Soto Zen Center on a regular basis, practicing virtually.
And
I have to admit, is not quite as good as being in the room with the rest of you. I certainly would be the first to admit to that. But in my case, it does provide quite a bit of support to be a part of this group.
you've also done a wonderful job of helping with the guest speaker program. It's great. You're in Rome, Georgia, in Berry College, right? A retirement center there, community.
Yes, I'm a graduate of Berry College, and I was pleased to be able to move into a retirement community that's built on college property next door. So it allows me to sit in on classes, participate with the college students, because between me and the rest of you, we've got some wonderful retired seniors in this retirement community. But who wants to hang around old people all the time, right?
Right. We used to have a student sitting group there at Berry. There was a Korean teacher who would bring me up there periodically. So as you come back to the room, Kat, can you tell a little bit of your story?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of feel like I've always been adjacent to like Buddhism and like meditation. Growing up, my dad had a meditation practice that he did to kind of help him with his smoking addiction and other things. And you know, he worked so much, like he would work and then come home and meditate. So I guess my way of spending time with him as a kid was like trying to meditate. I was just a kid, so I would just sit with him. But so yeah, I guess it's always just had like that part of it's always had like really fond, you know, things attached to it. And then I kind of instilled a meditation practice, whether it was like Catholicism or then just like outside when I left the church. Yeah, just kind of meditating every day and finding different practices of meditation to see what worked for me. And I was like reading about Buddhism, Zen Buddhism. I think I picked up like one of Brad Warner's books at some time, and it seemed really cool. I feel like I kind of grew up in a rural area, so it was not as much access to like a Zen center or anything like that. So I just never really knew how to get started, and I think I just kind of, you know, drifted. But yeah, I think it kind of got reignited during the oil spill, the BP oil spill. I lived in South Mississippi, and I was helping do outreach for the Vietnamese community. They didn't have like the government wasn't reaching out to them in Vietnamese, and they were one of the people most impacted. So I didn't speak Vietnamese, but you know, I learned enough that I could. They knew me, and so yeah, I tried to help. We had Vietnamese students come in to try and translate and talk to them. We got locals to do it, and I was like recruiting and doing that.
And you got into the film business in the last few years, right?
But yeah, but before that, like some of that was still like we actually posted in there's a Vietnamese Buddhist temple in Biloxi, and they let us like we set up shop there like, every day. And so that's kind of how I think I started getting even more kind of just like into the variations of Buddhism and like all that stuff. And yeah, but again, I just never really quite took that step. And then I joined the film industry, and my job is in camera. I'm a focus puller. It's a very stressful job. And yeah, I just kind of was like trying to find that balance because like the stress doesn't really help you when you're doing the job, but it is a very stressful job. So it's like this horrible circle of like, trying to focus, but you're like mentally focused and you're stressed out and
I was prop master on one feature film and it stress.
yeah. And and my job relies on a lot of other people doing their job really well. And if there's like one person who's out of sync or whatever, it does make it a lot harder if you have a new actor or they're just like, I just changed everything. And you're like, oh, cool, thanks for not telling me. It's fine. It's fine. They yelled at me, but it's fine.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
I want to get to Joe Shin. Joe Shin is just contacted me yesterday. I think you sent an email.
Joe Shinger, so I'm from the Eugene Buddha High Soto Zen community temple out there, Eugene, Oregon, and in town because my son's going to graduate tomorrow with marine. The youngest son is graduating in marine chemistry. And it's my story getting to Zen. I always thought about meditating for a long time, but just never quite found the time. I didn't have any friends or family or anybody that meditated. No excuse why I didn't
That's a
figure
good
it out.
reason to get
But,
into
and born and raised, still practicing Catholic. But it was about next oldest son. His sophomore year, he was at Lewis and Clark College for his freshman year. His sophomore year, he wanted to go to study abroad program, Waseda University in Tokyo, and so like 7 years ago, and thought, okay, I could do the Duolingo thing and learn a little bit about some Japanese phrases, but it's like, well, maybe I could learn something about Buddhism. And there's some Japanese flavors of that, so let's learn about that before we go over there. There are a couple of Japanese temples in Eugene, and second one I went to, I just, okay, this feels good. It was Soto Zen. There was something about Asia McMullen was just was also raised Catholic. Maybe like the first time I heard some mention of the eye with which we seek a lot is the same eye that God sees us. What was from Meister Eckhart? It's like Meister Eckhart. I've heard that name somewhere before, and then looked it up afterwards. And Dominican priest from the 1200s. Not here I am going to a Dominican parish in Eugene, and never heard Meister Eckhart. So I'm sure all the Christian contemplatives were hiding in plain sight, and I just never knew about that tradition at all until. And I guess I go back and say, there's a.
How do you like the new Pope?
It looks like it's I'm glad we don't. Glad it's continuing in the lineup of.
I did my pre-wedding talk with Military Institute of Science, talking about houses. My wife is from Chicago.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's in Chicago. What's your name? Please introduce yourself again.
Do I look familiar?
You look familiar.
Not my first time here.
No.
I used to come many years ago from Knoxville, Tennessee.
Oh, yes, yes.
I can share my story a little bit. If you'd like to hear.
No, thank you.
You're a chemist?
Yes.
So he is a chemist. He stopped practicing yet, but he's a chemist. My father was a chemist. My mother, well,
Not a meth chemist.
uranium chemist. And the time, Manhattan Project work. My father was a chemist from Ohio. I was born in Oak Ridge. He was a supervisor of at least 4 shifts that did the uranium recovery and recycle, the separation of U-235 from U-238. My mother was an chemical operator on one of these shifts. They married after the war. She died early in life as a resulting from exposure to uranium, airborne uranium particles, as did many of her colleagues. Oak Ridge was a wonderful place to grow up. It was a special city, secret city for a while. I still remember going through the gates early in life. Um, I had a great school system and an excellent library.
And one of our female senior students was at Georgia Tech there for Appalachia Soto Zen. She's working. Um, I had an unusual experience one day in an English class that I couldn't understand. And I was going to a counselor. At the time, no three city schools had a counselor. How many schools at that time did that for their kids? If they did. And I asked her about it, and she had no clue what I was talking. This one, I think, was it Maslow would call a peak experience. Mm-hmm. Small, nevertheless, astonishing for me. In the course of, I became aware that there was something called Buddhism. And then one day, in my senior year, I was looking through some books at the Oakridge Club. And they had one called, I think it was Journey into Silence. It was an English fellow who had, after World War II, had gone to, or what was then called Marine. And like a lot of people, he wanted to make sense of war. And he had a teaching area or a Burmese meditation master in the forest was giving instructions. And he was told to sit in his little room, count his breath, 1 to 10. Sound familiar? And then start over again. And they said, we'll be back in a week. And I came back in a week and he was thinking, okay, now they're going to tell me the secret. But they said, how's it going? He said, well, I did it. He said, well, this time, stand up and walk, but do the same thing. So anyhow, the point of that book was I felt that these people are on something. And they're related to my little parents. Fast forward to Chicago. I lived in Chicago a couple of years, worked in the Loop. My wife was gone overseas to see her family. Didn't have anything to do. I saw a little sticker on a lamppost down in the Loop that said, Philip Capello is going to give a little book workshop at the Roosevelt University on Saturday. So I went down to that. And there are, if you look back over your life, and I've had a long one, you'll things that seem unimportant at the time, haphazard, and consequently, turn out to be pivotal moments in your life. You didn't even notice. Don't know. Because you look back over your life, you can measure your life from these points, different points. So the first thing he said, we all sat down and he came in and adjusted his robes, much like you. He had a couple of attendants with him. He looked at us all. I don't know if you've ever heard his voice. It was kind of high pitched and squeaky. And he looked at us all and he said, in Buddhism, there are no coincidences. In the fact that we're here today, I won't tell you the rest. You can fill the blanks. And then he taught us to do seated meditation, which was I wore some tight-fitting jeans, worst thing they should have found. Almost passed out. The blood was cut off. And I was complaining about that, and they one of the people said, that's just your mind visiting this. And stop. Just telling me that. So I managed to attempt to follow my breath in those tight-fitting jeans for the rest of the session. So after that, I was taken home, the train home from Carroll Stream from suburban Chicago. A couple of young Catholic priests got on the train in front of me.
They were talking back and forth. And this may sound very egotistic, probably was in some way, but I felt kind of sorry for them because I thought they were so involved in learning dogma. They missed the point. Anyhow,
We have to be careful about saying something like that.
yeah, especially since I've never said that to anyone else before, but that's just how I was thinking. Even as I thought it, I thought,
I understand.
yeah, maybe some think that way. Probably not very generous of you. But I won't tell you the rest of my life, but I know I did. I paid a lot of attention and read a lot of books. I don't. I gave up the books a long time ago. I don't care about the books anymore.
Oh, you showed me mine.
You should read yours. I didn't know you had one, but you got two. Well, then I could get them. I'd have a library of three books. The other would be the poems of real time. Um, anyway, my wife is from Colombia, South America. And in the course of living in Colombia, I became very interested in indigenous people there. There are a number of anthropologists and stuff. In my view of religion, I guess I'm pretty accepting of almost, there's something in almost everybody that strike me as true. And then there's a lot of stuff that strike me as superfluous, including indigenous people in the jungle. And so personally for me, I'm sure that I've learned this phrase from someone else, but for me, I think Zen fits me like an old pair of shoes. Just what I'm most comfortable with. I don't come and see you anymore. Uh, and I don't know if I'll come back. 77 now. It's my last trip here.
Where are you living now?
Knoxville. It's not that far, but it's more and more difficult for me to drive.
That was small group there for a while.
Really?
If you could look for some practical, just look for somebody to carpool with you. So you have to drive all the time.
It's a possibility. Anyway,
One of our guys in Nashville is the former head of the chemical engineering department at the university there. So
I can't get away from these chemists.
so much.
Well, all my neighbors are either chemists or chemical engineers and sprinkling it in. Anyhow, I've talked a lot in this.
That's a wonderful
I can do my best.
story.
Nice. I've got another little tie-in with the, we talk about no coincidences about things, and we just had a big ceremony at the Kuwait ceremony, the first time it's ever been done in North America, but it's Buddhist different Buddhist priests showed up that one.
It looked like a flock of pigeons.
Yeah, it was amazing. But something I said, still Catholic, and one thing every morning, this morning there's this priest, Father Richard Rohr, he's Albuquerque, New Mexico. He runs the Center for Action and Contemplation down there, and I read his little daily meditation. And the morning of it, Sunday morning, I guess it was just last Sunday, so I believe, about a week ago, the meditation. So I was in the midst of this homunculus ceremony and gone home and sort of ready to go back again and read my little meditation, and he goes off on the bottom of it, and Richard Rohr, baby Russian art stitcher, and just goes all into gate, paragate, and he's it's just like, here I am in the depths of Buddhist thing, and then here's my Franciscan priest friend, throwing out gate, paragate, and then the next day he did even a longer homily about that, it's just those two worlds for me just keep on crashing into each other.
Mostly semantics, the differences, mostly semantics. In Buddhism, God is a head upon a head. It's kind of like an unnecessary idea. But we have the cosmic Buddha, Vajrayana Buddhist, the cosmic Vajrayana series, dark, deep old blue and gold. Those are the colors of Vajrayana, cosmic Buddha. The whole universe is Vajrayana's body. How different is that from God? So, anyone else?
Sure.
Yeah. Oh,
And
Peter for
I'm trying to. And
I can't believe that my career is tied very closely tied to cameras. And when I got into learning more advanced motion picture cameras, I came to pulling focus, and I said, I'm going to skip this and become an operator. And that way I can yell at the first assistant. I'm sure that's never happened to you.
Oh,
But to have two other people, I mean, that is a real odd collection in a small group like this. Uh, as far as beginning with meditation,
We could do some narrow niche marketing.
I mean, we can start just the focus puller song. We need it so much. It's just getting, the job's just getting.
Everybody on the film I worked on needed that.
when I was about 11 or 12 years old, nobody was at home. I grew up in Alabama and
That's Queen of Alabama.
Montgomery.
My mama was from Palmer County.
Yeah.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
And for some reason, I just laid down on a living room floor, which was wood, and I closed my eyes. This is not suggested by anybody. I closed my eyes and I went to what we call the place. And I thought, this is very weird. And I need not tell anybody about it, especially in Montgomery, Alabama. But I would do that, and I didn't know that it was meditation. And I wasn't sleeping. Um, and I thought, this is pretty cool, but I'm still not going to tell anybody. Uh, part two is where I joined the Navy during the Vietnam era, and I was a Navy photographer, among other things, and was sent to Japan to a military photo operation in Yokosuka. And so I lived there for 2 years. The last year I lived in Tokyo, uh, working for a military newspaper. But just by living in Japan for 2 years, you start to absorb some of this just by osmosis. It's just like different culture, different way of doing things, um, much more contemplative culture. And one day I took the day off, and I would get on the subways and I just look at a name and I say, okay, I'm gonna stop there, and come up in a neighborhood and just see what was there. And I was wandering through this heavily wooded neighborhood, which is rare in Tokyo, and there's a Zen wedding going on, just one of the most beautiful things I have ever seen. And that is probably my first real connection, because I stood there. It's an open air uh, thing, and strangers can just come up and stand there. It's not like, oh, you can't come in here because you're not one of us. And I stood there for 2 years and what 2 hours watch. Yes. And I thought there is something here I need to know about eventually. So when I got back to the United States, uh, and I went to college and then got a job at Channel 5 right down the road here. There for 15 years, but that that craziness of working in television or motion pictures kept me away from anything particularly spiritual. And one day I lived uh, not very far from Channel 5. And this is the magic moment. I drive past this intersection and I see that zone light on there. I said, there's something about that. And I know lots of people who've had the same experience. I said, what is zone light? And for some reason, one day I had to drive down past here. And I said, that's something I need to know about. That was my first pass here. I've learned both with a friend and being here how to meditate. My meditation is pretty sloppy. I drift in and out. Since they said, well, he says meditation is falling asleep, meditating, and falling off the chair.
Sleep, staying awake.
Yeah, and staying apart, staying awake through that. So I'm really a beginner. Uh, uh, I've got several books on Buddhism, I'm trying to keep my focus here, so that I'm not getting too many messages, and so that's where I am.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, you bet.
Valerie, do you have anything to say? You would like to say about you?
I'm sorry I missed the initial theme, although I can sort of
Just, usually on this second Sunday, we interview a member about their way finding, how they got into this and why they're still doing it, and are they crazy or what, So, it's interesting to hear other members of the asylum reporting. Asylum.
maybe my brief. Some people may not want.
We hear her enough, John?
Yes.
Joe here, also known as Val. I did my first meditation, I had some curiosity about it, mid-70s, I guess late 70s. It was transcendental meditation, the Arrow, you may all recall it. Not quite what I wanted, but I could have first continued that through, I think we have a theme with chemists and now another with camera audio visual. That would be me. Alexa knows about that angle. So all through that corporate America, and I continued that, and I took yoga a good while back. I heard it would help me with my meditation practice, and that meditation yoga was originally meant for that. So I did that. Teacher still practice. And I kept up with the meditation. I was attending this with the Living Center of Atlanta. I think it's the 90s now. If anybody knows any of those folks, I threw myself into that big sangha until they had a self-implosion. But the minister there was very into meditation and Buddhism too, believe it or not. So we would have separate offshoots. It's much like a Unitarian almost kind of thing, where you will have different things. So I kind of followed that because they were into meditation, which I like. I discovered New York Center for Contemplative Care and also Upaya, which became a wonderful place for me to go take refuge in every now and then.
How did you stumble across us?
I think it was after Upaya, because every time I go, I get altitude sickness. I like to go, but I have to stay in Albuquerque for a couple days, get used to it, then go whatever classes. I'm there for a couple weeks. And I think I was in Dokusan with Ulrika Sensei, who said, "Why are you not going to Atlanta Soto Zen?" I don't know. It seems to be easier to get on a plane than to get over there. So I have been here, I think, once or twice a while back, and I think it was just business kept me from it. Now I work for myself, and I guess when did I start coming back up? And lovely sangha going on, and
We were just starting a sitting group with their wellness center.
yeah.
And where are you located?
It's in Woodstock, and I'll have to make some adjustments because it's at the same time as this. I thought that way I could hook in. But personally, I missed this, so I think I might start it earlier. But again, we don't have folks coming out there. I know a couple of folks have volunteered some things, but it'll happen. It's just It's lovely.
It's time for people to find you out.
Yeah, I need to mention that White Willow Sitting Center is open in Woodstock Sunday mornings.
Wonderful. Anyone else in the house? Oh, we go. Sharon? Lucian.
Lucian, my history with the Zen Center started at Candler Park, and my first wife and I, well, we got married in the Zen Center, Zen wedding. So, went came here for a little while, and I lost my way. Uh, Trying to find my way back, entered into seminary and breathed the Anglican Church. With continued studies and everything, I would actually commit the acquaintance of that person who was in the Russian Orthodox Church, who said, "Well, if you believe this way, then why are you in the Anglican Church?" And I think you believe that. So I entered into brief to the Russian Orthodox Church and serving a monastery on top of a mountain in Osaka for the past 15 years. Studying hesychasm, which is kind of Orthodox Christian meditation, being appropriate. But reacquainted with the Zen Center when my back, L5 disc in my back collapsed and barely walked. Found that instead of medicating myself with all kinds of chemicals, and I found that when I sat in a zazen position, pain was relieved. So I will start sitting for long periods of time. In fact, it was the only way I could sleep. If I had pain became too great, I'd get off the bed, sit on my own bed, and sometimes my wife would see me just wake me up in the morning. You can sleep in the sitting position. But I had realization, I've taken upon myself through seminary all these dogmas and everything, and I found that in sitting and contemplating, the mind is the beginning of all things. As you think, so should you become. I think I became much more open-minded by what I was trying to do when I first came, and soon I found that realization kind of read other realizations to where I'm not ready to retire as a priest and enter fully into Zen 100%. Doesn't mean that what I found in Orthodoxy was wrong. It just means that doing it a different way. So someone says about the idea of God, I'm not so worried about whether God exists or not. If God does exist, and we look in the scriptures that tell us that God lives within you, that the kingdom of heaven is within. If you read anything from Thomas Merton or the book by I think it was Seraphim Rose, in his early meetings with the Chian master during college days. And he wrote a book about it, which led me back over to Zen. So you're right.
I'll tell her she had a couple of short tales when encountered the Maharishi, and these people think it quotes in his books. And one was a televangelist and Zen master, a well-known televangelist at the time. And he was sort of waxing on about the presence of God and being suffused with the Spirit of God and everything. And the Zen master says, "Don't worry, pretty soon God will go away." And he said, God will, no, God will never go away. I will go away. I know that I will go away. God will never go away. He said, you go away, God go away, make no difference. That is not dismissive. Not atheist.
There's one thing I left off about Zonalite. Does anybody know what Zonalite was?
Yeah.
It's the same as vermiculite.
Right.
Insulation.
And turned out to be cancerous because it had asbestos in it. That's why it's not here anymore, but the name is still here. The company was
Imported from Lilly, Montana, which is a Superfund site, which brought down here, manufactured here,
right.
turned into insulation, but And it breaks down into asbestos. Kind of close to it.
Aren't you glad you came when you did?
Well, we had the EPA here for 1 year. Michael were in there were trucks going out of here every day for,
Wow.
I think, a year, cleaning up the
That park is what they call site. That means there's only so far you can contaminate it, and you get approval from the EPA to use it for another purpose. So it's a clean that it's going to get. And the good thing is asbestos is not that toxic if you don't smoke.
No, no,
It's broken up into the air.
U-234 is not toxic either. Not very toxic either unless you inhale it.
Well, what it is inside of your lungs, inside of the trachea, you've got what's called the mucociliary escalator. And there are a bunch of cilias that beat mucus up out of the lower reaches of your lung. And then you cough out the material, whatever it is. When you smoke, smoking causes the mucociliary escalator to go to sleep. And that is why when people quit smoking, they cannot stop coughing and they cough up all sorts of crap that's stuck to the insides of their lungs. So if a particle is small enough that it makes it past the mucociliary escalator, makes it past what's called your nasal turbinates, and makes it down to the far reaches of the lung and gets embedded on the side of the lung, what starts to happen is the lung starts covering that with collagen, with scar tissue. And that little section of the lung is no longer able to pass gases back and forth. And the more scarring you get on the insides of your lungs, the lungs get less and less efficient. Okay, so that's the first thing. That's asbestosis. The problem otherwise, since this is the fiber itself is very polar, it has an electrical charge. If it is able to migrate outside of the lung, it causes another disease called mesothelioma, which is a type of cancer of the lining of the lung. But the thing is you don't smoke, you've got a good, healthy mucociliary escalator, you've got a much less chance of contracting these diseases. So it's called a synergistic effect. You've got two different toxins, put the two of them together, and it's much more than just 1 + 1. It's like 1 + 800. So that's what's happening.
Now we're just sitting as best as we can.
Oh, high escalator is gold plated. The other aggravating factor is the cigarette, tobacco crystal is like a sharp pointed, very hot, and lodges in the lung. And tobacco in this country is treated with arsenics. The arsenics seep into the soil and the tobacco plant absorbs the arsenics. So it's not only the tobacco, it's also you're smoking arsenic.
Well, the plant itself. Okay, this is getting way too far. I'm sorry. So instead of my background is in, you're getting scholarship because that's kind of what I do.
That's what we're doing.
What the plant itself evolved to do. What the plant itself evolved to do was to soak up metals out of the soil and deposit all of these metals in various different chemical arrangements in its leaves to make it toxic to insects. So we're too big to have that effect. But what happens when you expose insects to nicotine? Their nervous systems get totally overridden and they can't move. And so but we're too big to have that effect. So it has all these other effects on you. Yeah.
There is a God.
Was it?
There must be a God.
Well, one of the most interesting things in the world to me is there between plants and insects, there's this constant arms race. Out of the plants ward off being eaten by insects, out of the insects evolve a workaround to get. Absolutely fascinating.
So I'm glad you came in. Would you like to tell a little bit of your story? This is our other new resident.
I'm sort of a major introvert, so it'll be a bit of a struggle for me.
Good. Good practice.
I started off studying the Tao, and then I went to Rinzai and fully applied that to my life. But then since COVID, my life has become completely destabilized. Something like that.
No, you can play it. You can do right place.
You mean you had COVID? You're positive?
I
Resistant
I fully,
experience of.
yeah, I fully isolated. No outside contact for 2 years.
Other than that, I know. It's such as it is. The world, I mean.
I would say neither of the new students said their names loud enough, or new students, excuse me, new residents that I could hear them. Could you say their names again?
Daniel.
Daniel, thank
Yeah.
you. Cyrus, good to meet you. And
Alexa.
Alexa and who's it?
You can call me Dave.
Dave?
They call me Dave. That's how I go by.
Dave. Signing, Dan.
And Joe
Joking, but probably it's a one and done. But this is, yeah,
you know,
glad to be here for a few days. Yeah. Michael's my Christian.
so you're not going to learn everybody's name. It takes a long time. So we've got 10 more minutes left. John, do you have anything further to ask or say?
No, we could open it up to Joseph and Corolla. Corolla, Joseph, do either of you have a comment or a question for our members that are attendees that have been sharing a little bit of their life?
Nothing too extensive, but yeah, no, thanks everyone for sharing your stories, and welcome to the new.
Thank you, Joseph. Come on, Adrian, you always have something to say. Oh, let's advertise your sewing class next weekend. It's all day Saturday.
Welcome to all the new residents. I'll meet you next week when I spend the weekend down there sewing with Brian, and anyone who has questions is welcome to come watch, come ask questions, talk to either of us, and I will see you then.
Thank you. We don't want to hear your life story. We don't have enough time.
Well, it's pretty boring anyway.
Only to you.
What is the sewing?
Sewing is the formal tradition. We don't sew anything this fancy, but we sew the vestments.
Oh, okay.
If you become a disciple, you sew your own nowadays. And the thing I like about it is it slows you down. Takes some time. If you want to come and check it out, you're welcome to. You know, if you like to sew, you can help sew because a lot of the little corner or leafing and everything gets very, very intricate. So, like chant Namu Ke Butsu with each stitch is kind of meditative. Anaya, did you have anything to say today?
I can tell my story. It's not very interesting. There's no incarceration or
5 minutes.
just an apology.
Okay,
I didn't share nothing. I didn't grow up religious or anything. Like many people, I grew up in South, listening to Roman Christianity, but I'm with. Always been very skeptical and kind of scientifically minded. So I think with those terms, religion kind of didn't feel like it was for me. And then I was in college and kind of going through a rough time. And I was trying to impress this young woman I was romantically interested in. She was like, I'm going to a meditation class. That sounds awesome. We'll go. I had no interest in meditation. The video and just again, there's no coincidences. It was a Rinzai teacher in the Northeast that was teaching a class, and that was sort of entry to Zen, getting me kind of interested. Read some books after the Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind was a big influence for me, kind of getting me interested. And tried to meditate on and off, kind of by myself, and found it difficult. So I tried to get involved in the Atlanta Sangha here, and I guess it was 2019. Came a couple of times and fell off. Started coming back kind of in the fall when Val did, and I've been trying to get involved since then. I think Zen is one of the only religious or spiritual systems that has sort of made any sense to me or connected with me. Someone mentioned it kind of in between shoes. It kind of feels like that for me sometimes. So, no, no.
My wife is not the person that tried to make me decisions. Nothing. Yes, there's no romantic belly flop quite like telling people you're boobs. Yeah. It's now you're going to get two questions right off the bat. They're going to say something along the lines, "You're not a Buddhist. I've seen you eat meat." Right. Right. Like, no, you don't know much about Buddhism. And then the second is they're going to ask if you're celibate. Right. You know, I just always say I don't have to be. You're making me wish I was.
Well, because my wife is Catholic, and we've been married for more than 50 years, so she's okay with it.
Yeah, there you go.
In fact, she, her Catholicism is pretty narrow. She doesn't like big churches, big cathedrals. She likes simplicity. She's Buddhist, but doesn't know it yet. She's one of her aunts was the abbot of in Colombia. It was a fairly important, or abbotess, I guess you see. And their order used to just do all kinds of crap. Yeah. And she revolted and was almost thrown out of the church. And she devoted the rest of her life, still remained a Catholic, but devoted herself to helping the poor. So there's Catholics and there's Catholics.
Yeah, I feel that way. And I used to go to Mexico to do like mission trips. Like we would go to the church, and we'd go out rural Mexico. And I wound up staying with a family. And I think at one point, like the churches are so small. And that was like probably the time that I actually really enjoyed like mass. Like it just, that there was like the consistent of like the structure of the mass, the like even though it's a different language. I mean, I speak Spanish, but there's like the same structures. There's some of that familiarity, but they take such pride in such a small space, and they just like make it count. It's like the people is what matters. And
We had Catholics come here and were dressed in black robes, chanting in guttural voices. That's what I came here to get away from. In my book, one of my books, make the point that we can say what we want about the Catholics and the evangelists. They're the ones who walk the walk as well as talking the talk. They put their lives on the line all around the world, trying to help people, not only their soul, but their body, trying to, help hunger and help all of that kind of craziness going on.
That James, brother, the Lord said, feed the hungry, clothe the naked, take care of the sick, and then visit in prison. This is true religion. It's true religion. That's, there's no praxis, there's no presence of that.
So on that note, John, I think we're going to wrap up. We'll chant the 4 great vows. We do them 3 times. So if you don't know them, probably pick it up. Beings are marvelous, I want to freedom. Delusions are inexhaustible, I long to them. My gates are abundance, I want to them. The Buddha way is unsurpassable, I vow to freedom. These are I vow to freedom. Virtues are soon, I vow to happiness and brothers. The Buddha way is unsurpassable, I vow to freedom. These are but to freedom. The illusions are exhausted. I to freedom. Yes, I vow to enter them. The Buddha way is unsurpassable. I vow to freedom.